Hi, how you going? So I thought we'll get stuck into some illustration work. So I'm set up here ready. I need to do I want to do like a character for myself for my channels and that. So as like a profile picture. So I thought what better place to do that than here? And I've got my screen up ready so you'll be able to see everything that I'm capturing, and I'm just going to talk through as I go. So let's kick into it. Right. So what I'm going to do, I want to just have like a head sort of shape here that'll kind of sit quite central. Now, what I do like to do is start with a pretty perfect circle. So I feel like this kind of gives a good place to start, even if it's not necessarily the look we want. What I do like to do next is jump it straight into eyes and try and get these eyes sitting in a good place. From there, I'm going to build out the nose, and then I want the cheeks to sort of overlap a little bit on that, and this cheek can come out a bit. Now, drawing yourself is not always easy, but I've got my camera here that I can look straight into. Now, I'll draw the pupils. Now, with the characters I've been sort of working with, I really like this sort of 1950s style character. So I want these kind of big pupils here, and get the eyes nice and pretty even. I'll start taking out a few of these extra lines so I can kind of see what I'm working with. Now, I like to start with very rough, so I don't want to get too detailed. This is purely just like kind of sketching and thinking. It gives you that flexibility to create. I think one thing that we're sort of seeing at the moment with AI is that process of creating is getting a little bit lost, which is a bit of a shame. And I think it's actually, well, look, it's not a shame. I think it's an important part of the journey to have a creative process. Right. So I'm gonna kind of draw myself as quite a happy guy. Now I've got a gap in my teeth, which I'm very proud of. So I'm going to include that in my illustration here. I think that's quite a nice little characteristic, even though some might not agree. Okay, here we go. I'm looking alright. I'm not happy with this eye here. It's just sitting a little bit funny. I'm gonna try and sort of squash it in and give it a little bit of tilt. Yeah, I think that's getting there. That's getting better. Now with the eyes, I like to put this little bit just to kind of have that. Yeah, that's looking good. Now I'm going to go with a bit of the scruffy beard as well. And ears, I don't think my ears are huge, but having them sit out a little bit's nice. I'll kind of go some real, this is like the real cartoon sort of style ear there, which I think would actually be a little bit bigger. It's a bit too small. Let's try that. Okay, now we'll get my hair sort of pretty simply done. I like to sit the eyebrows up, especially with these characters, even if they're kind of sitting off the head. It gives that old school little bit of a, like, I don't know, like Roger Rabbit. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? One of my favourite movies ever. That kind of style I think is quite cool. Alright, so I'm feeling pretty happy with that. Now, one thing, I had already thought of this, but I wanted to kind of give this a little bit of an edginess in the sort of characterization, because it's going to be my my profile picture. So I'm just going to add another layer here. I wanted to sort of add like an arrow going through my head, just to kind of make it a bit bizarre and a bit offbeat. So what I'll do is I feel like with these characters you need these kind of curved lines, so rather than going straight on the arrow feathers, I think that's what they are, so I'm not into archery or anything. I feel like they need to kind of have a bit of curve to them, and I'll do that with the point as well. And this kind of plays a bit into this cartoon style as well, like having something that's a little bit different and zany, I guess. Cool, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to have that sort of exiting about there, and then you won't be able to see the entry point, which is fine. Yeah, cool, I think that's sitting okay. I might just kind of give it a bit more angle. Maybe you can sit in front of the ear as well. I might go a little bit smaller. I kind of want to keep that big. So it's good to have this kind of flexibility to play around with things. Now, keep that uniform. Obviously, with this kind of thing, I've got to think about what it looks like from a portfolio photo, so you want to have a lot of nice space around it, so it's not taking up too much real estate and has some sort of flexibility in it as well. I've also just made a decision to go like this, which I think will look a bit better. Maybe cut the arrow off at the top bit a little bit more, so it's, yes, that's better. I like it. Okay, just move this bit back a bit here. Okay, I'm feeling pretty happy about that. So as far as I'm concerned, this is kind of my rough now. So what I'm going to do is just drop that opacity back a bit. So as I kind of work, I'll be using this as my reference point. Now, I like to work with lines, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use like a rough inker. So this is what it looks like. I'm just going to stick with black because I quite like the black look of it all. I'm going to use a few of these Procreate sort of shape options. I don't want them to touch there, so let's get this sitting a bit better. Okay. Now, as always, please feel free to ask any questions in the comments, and I'd be more than happy to provide some answers where I can. Now, if you haven't watched my introduction video, I run a illustration design agency called Patch Creative Co. We're based in Australia on the Sunshine Coast, which is a beautiful part of the world. But we work with a lot of different places all around Australia and around the world. We do lots of different projects and yeah, get to work with some really cool people on really cool stuff too. My favorite is character design, obviously, and sort of mascot design. I think there's a lot of benefit in doing that, and I think, you know, seeing how this stuff goes is great. So yeah. Alright, so I'm gonna just keep cracking along here. So I'm getting all of these sort of rough lines that I had and trying to just refine them up a bit. Just gonna get my mustache in there. Now the teeth are a tricky one. And I'm just gonna have a bit of a play around with this because I'm not too sure how I want this to sit. I don't want to look too goofy, but a little bit fun as well. That's so weird when I'm talking about myself for this, but yeah. Sometimes what I find is once you sort of build in the dark, like if you're using sort of blacks, and especially when you're working firstly in like a monocolor, building in these dark bits first can kind of help you work out how you want it to sit. I'm just gonna sort of blunt them off a little bit. So they're sitting well. But yeah, you essentially when you're doing, especially with line work, you're working with negative and positive type stuff. So you need to really kind of be thinking in that mindset. And as you can see, sometimes I'll draw a line and then I'll redraw and redraw and redraw just over and over again till it sort of sits in a place that I feel really good about. Okay. Make that ear a bit bigger. Just feel like that's going to add to the character a little bit more. Actually, might just just leave it like that. I think that's pretty cool. So you can start to see this take a bit of shape. No, I went too big with the ear. Let's try that again. A little bigger, but not too big. Yeah, that looks good. It's quite handy having the screen up where you can kind of look back from it. And okay, so now I'm gonna come back to this arrow. Now I do want to keep these lines quite straight, so I'm just going to use the sort of snap tool where it locks it in. What I might actually do, this might be a bit of fun. I might build in like a hole in the head there. I think that could look quite cool, just for something to add that extra sort of cartoon vibe to it. And this is the thing, like as you sort of develop these images, they'll constantly change, and that's okay. I mean, that's part of the creative experience, is just experimenting and trying different things. And if it doesn't work, you just kind of try it again and do something different. But you got to take those chances, because if you don't, then you can easily sort of lose the focus on what you're doing, and you have some like big missed opportunities too. Yeah, I like that. So I don't see this section here. I know this seems very finicky, but right there's you can kind of see the angle too much. So I want that to smooth out a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is just go like this, and this is where you kind of, it's almost like sculpture, where you're kind of sculpting things to get it to look the way you want. And you jumping between your eraser and your pen, you can kind of get things there. Here's another one that I'll do. So yeah, you'll probably notice as well, most of the time I try and avoid duplicating things. So I'll, instead of duplicating, I'll try and redraw it, because even though it takes a bit longer, I feel like redrawing you kind of get a nice little variant, so it works quite well. Right. I'm kind of feeling, even though I know this is me, I'm feeling these kind of like old Prospector vibes with this dude. So yeah, it's a nice little bit of inspiration there. Okay, so no, I'm not happy with that. What I'm going to do is curve these off a bit. They're a bit too wave-like. It's hard when you're kind of working upside down like that. Okay, that's looking better. Okay, so yeah, that's a bit more clean, and yeah, we'll just want to tidy this bit up because it's not sitting perfectly, but that's looking much better. Yeah, nice. Yeah, so like I said, I like using these rough brushes because you get this nice bit of texture, and it can help keep things interesting. And see, you can see as I've just done there, like I've done some sort of quite quick lines without thinking a lot about it, and that can a lot of the time give you a really good result, because if you overthink lines and you spend too long sort of crafting them, they don't have as much energy, I guess, in them, and that energy is what, you know, makes one piece look different to another piece. There's so much sort of depth in that discussion, I think, which I won't go into now because I'm getting close to finishing this dude. Yeah, look, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I think it's kind of covered off most. What I'm kind of looking at now and what I'm looking for is where does it not sit right? And I look at like this cheek here doesn't quite match this one. This one's sort of sitting up a little bit too much, whereas this one has like a bit of a, I guess, a curved down motion. So I want to try and get them looking a bit more close to each other in how it works. So what I'll do is just kind of try a few lines and see if that can help amend that a little bit, which I think it will. I don't want to go too droopy, but I also don't want it to look too different. Right. Okay. I feel like that's a bit off. Okay, that's looking better. Now I might have the beard take the foreground on that one. That's nice. I've got the teeth, nice curve on the teeth. So this is just like, this is where I kind of finesse and just kind of tidy it up, make sure I'm happy with it. I think that bottom of that arrow can kind of be cut in. So it's really kind of working on really small kind of components of the piece now, which you might not actually see me working on in there. But essentially I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to drop out the back layer. And that's, whoops, just realized what I have forgotten. So obviously I missed the arrowhead. So I'm going to do that. Again, I want a really quick kind of swipe on that motion and have that kind of sitting like that. Let's have a look and see. Yeah, That looks pretty cool. Yeah, it's got this nice kind of cartoony flavour to it. I might even look at sort of taking the bottom of these lines out. See how that looks. Yeah, that kind of gives a nice little vibe. Even leave the bottom on this side. Do it that, just so they look like they're a bit more blended and less kind of cut off. Just de-sharpen those. What I'll actually do is this one back. So you want to try and sort of break pattern as much as you can, so that leaves it a little bit more. It gives it more interest, I feel. So for example, this section here, I've got broken on that side, but if on this side, it's actually this one in that way. So making sure you can kind of keep it a little bit interesting as well. Okay, just want to tighten up this eyebrow a little bit. But look, I think that's pretty close to what I want. I quite like this guy. Well, this me. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty happy with how that's sitting. I like the rough edges, but there's some parts you don't want to be rough, so that's where it can kind of get a little bit tricky, making sure you're happy with the bits. But yeah, look, that's it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm gonna just add some color. Like I said, this is for sort of my portfolio, so I want to make sure I have a bit of my branding colors in there for me and for Patch, which you would have seen on the bird that I've got on there. Right, okay, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. Yeah, I like that hole, I reckon that's a great addition. Okay, so I'm going to add another layer behind this layer now and start to add some colour in. So, actually what I might do, this is one thing I normally do, is I'll add like a grey layer of colour. Because I use quite textured brushes, I can't really do a drop fill. I can, but I don't really like the way it works. So what I'll tend to do is actually colour the whole thing in, and yeah, do it like that, and then I'll sort of tidy it up like this. There we go. So this will take a little while. So if anyone's wondering, I work in Procreate primarily. This kind of style obviously can look quite good in Illustrator. I've learned enough about Illustrator, but I don't feel at home on it. I have been trying to kind of look into Fresco as an option. I just feel that I don't quite get the textures that I'd like to get out of the vector. That's why I do love working in Bitmap. But yeah, look, it's a process, and it does take a bit longer sometimes, but I feel like as an artist, as an illustrator, as a creative, the process is sometimes the thing that you need to do. So sometimes the taking longer with it helps you get to a good point of working on it. So look, it's a preference thing, and I think obviously if you work with clients, the deadlines that you need to be busting out, you do need to work quite quickly, but yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add another layer on top of the grey layer, and I appreciate you can't see the layers I'm working with, but happy to explain as I go. Now on top of that, I'm going to do a clipping mask on that layer, and then I'm going to drop a color on top of that, so we start kind of working with our colors. So on this layer, then I'm gonna just start sort of coloring in the bits I need to. Still using the same brush, I think keeping a bit of that textured sort of tone even in the color is quite useful. Now the only white I'm going to do on this are the eyes and the teeth. Everything else will be a different color, because I don't want to overcook white in this picture, because it can just sometimes too much sort of white color in it can just be a bit domineering. Okay, so feeling pretty good about that. Let the colour on the tongue, and this arrow. I think I'll go maybe a red for the feathers. I think that'll look quite cool. Again, the colours I'm working with are my sort of current brand colours, but I do try and keep it a bit mixed up as well, and not sort of get too wetted down and then sort of add a few others in there. It's great to keep really branded on your colors, but you also don't want to be too stuck in your colors. Alrighty. Right, so just kind of working out what color to do my hair. I don't know if I want to be literal with it or I want to make it like kind of a bright color just to mix it up a bit. Yeah, I think I'm going to go a bright color. I feel like it's just too literal. Let's go like a blue. I think a blue will be a bit more fun. And I do sometimes do like shading with my illustration, but lately I've kind of just been liking it feeling quite flat and not having too much sort of, yeah, I don't know, too much shape to it. Sometimes it's nice to make it a little bit flatter. Just gonna add the colouring for my beard in. This part's a little bit of a trial and error for me. I'm not too sure what I want, so that can make it a little bit harder, but we'll see what we can come up with. Yeah, that's not too bad actually. Now, one thing I probably will have to do with this little decision I've made is take a bit of the pen out of this part, maybe this part too, and that bit there. Let's colour that little dot in there, and yeah, we'll just kind of give that, maybe drop it down a bit in size. Now, I don't want this to be too perfect. I want him to look a little bit wild and a little bit manic, so I think we're on the right track with that. It doesn't need to be a true representation of this. Okay. That's looking pretty cool. Now, I have thought about adding some rosy cheeks in, but let's see how that looks first. A bit much. Try it with the red, but I think it's going to be a bit too overcooked. It's not terrible actually. Okay, now the arrowhead. I think I've got this kind of blue here that I might use. So you'll see, like with the rosy cheeks, like I've kind of just left it because I want to sit on that and just see how it looks at the end. So I'm not 100% sold, but I do want to just kind of sit tight on that for now. Now look, that's pretty much it. I feel like maybe I'll just add a little bit of beard coming up here because the perspective looks a little bit off. It'd be nice to see how that looks. So the beard kind of covers a bit more real estate. Yeah, I feel like this is going to kind of work quite well. Yeah, I think that looks better. Okay, cool. So this essentially is it. Now I'm just kind of fine-tuning a few things. I think I'd like to darken this section here, just give that like a tiny bit of shadow, and I'm feeling like I want that arrowhead to be red as well. There's a lot of red in here. Yeah, that looks so much better. Okay, cool. I'm feeling good about this now. Now I'm just going to bring this sort of into the center, and I want to throw in a bit of a background. Now I'm actually digging the rosy cheeks. I think that balance of red looks really nice. I think on a whole I'm quite happy with this, to be honest. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to throw like an orangey yellow or something really bright and vibrant. It's not quite there. Let's try something a bit lighter. Yeah, that's not too bad. Just gonna try another. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. Okay, cool. Now look, that's pretty much it. So this is the process. Obviously quite a quick process, but you know, different illustrations you build out more or less and play around with it. But I hope that's really useful. Look, I'm going to keep these coming. If you've got any comments, any questions, just throw them in the comments down in below here. And yeah, I'll keep these coming.